And the Chris
Yep.
Paul stuff, I mean, I just don't know where you go with it. I mean, what's next? Obviously, he's staying
You know,
ready.
it's funny to kind of wrap a bow on that because it seemed like last week when we talked about it, we hit it on the head pretty square on, but I've gotten a chance to talk to multiple execs, coaches, even former players since then, and everyone pretty much is on the same page of what we were on, is 50-50 on it. And but if we had to lean towards a side, we would be leaning towards Chris's side. And that's due to the fact that the biggest point I think I'm glad I hit on last week that most people resonated with was people were saying, Austin, when you said players all the time have to deal with circumstances that they don't like being in, and you just got to deal with it and come to work and do your thing. The fact that the Clippers couldn't have just sucked it up and just dealt with them. You know what you signed up for when you took Chris on. Ty Lue's been around the NBA for 30 something years. Okay, uh, Lawrence Frank's been around the NBA for 30 years. Okay, Steve Ballmer's been an owner now for some good amount of time. You guys know and you've worked with him before. Okay, you know exactly who Chris is. Your top players know who Chris is from competing against him, or James playing with him in Houston. Y'all knew who he was when you brought him in. So if you guys expected him to be anything, even if it's his last year and it's a farewell tour and it's his last year playing basketball, he doesn't play a lot. So you just thought he would kind of just coast and be in the background and just help out when needed. That's not who Chris is. Chris is an ultra competitor. There's a reason why Chris is who he is. Now, it comes at the expense of sometimes people's feelings and he can be a burden just because how demanding he is, how opinionated he is. He's a point guard, point god, whatever you want to call him, right? That same competitive spirit's what's made Chris who he is. You got to take the good with the bad with it. Okay, your team's 5-30. Not really, but they're terrible. How do you what this has nothing to do with why you guys are winning or losing. Don't make it out to like he's a scapegoat and just hold it down. Just suck it up and deal with him. You only got 1 year deal. It's his farewell tour. It's his last year in the NBA, and he's the greatest player in your franchise. If you can't do it for Chris, what it shows and tells other people, other free agents, other people out there who would consider the Clippers, oh wow, they don't even. You could be the greatest player in their franchise, and they still will.
Well, Austin, you're a player. Do players think about that and take it into consideration, like when
Man,
they go to
what?
a
That
team?
just it matters. The way the
Yeah.
Clippers looked last week, they took a massive L. They took more of a big L than they have any other games this year. They've taken a lot of L's on the court, as we know. This was the biggest L this year was them waiving Chris Paul. From a franchise standpoint, you look beyond petty, and it looks like you don't reward greatness. Even if that greatness is butting heads with Ty Lue, it's a 1 year deal, and he's on his farewell tour. It's his 20th year in the NBA. He's an NBA Hall of Famer and legend, and he's the greatest player in the franchise history. Just shut up and deal with him. He don't play 35 minutes. This isn't a Russell Westbrook Sacramento Kings situation where he's out there playing hard every night. He still wants to play at a high level, be one of the main guys where you got to kind of deal with Russ. That's not what this is. So it just seems like you couldn't have done it for Chris. Listen, if it was me, a guy coming back to play for the Clippers, even me, I'm a guy that people value in Clippers history. They could have cut me. It could happen. People wouldn't have been up in arms. People would have made some jokes about it, but that would have been it. Cutting, it'd be like Russell Westbrook going back to OKC and them cutting him. You just can't do it. Then don't bring him back. If you're gonna bring him back, if you're gonna sell this whole farewell tour and do a whole tribute for him, Ty Lue's got to suck it up, as well as anybody else in the franchise who has problems with him, Lawrence Frank, and you have to you got to hold it down because other free agents look at these places now. The way this market is, these guys are getting paid so much. These places are going to places and they're viewing it as their future home. When you talk about Giannis right now, who's going to be on the market soon, or Trey Young, or all these guys, right? Whose names are floating around. They're looking for their next home, not just for their kids and their wives or their family and respective others to live, but what franchise can they go to? Can you trust them? Can you be? Will they accept you? Will they promote you? Will they have love for you? If things don't go well in the court, will they still have your back? This is what these top guys go through. So when you look at the Clippers franchise, a history that's not filled with anything, no banners, no nothing. There's a history of them doing wrong by whether it's their coach, my pops, Blake. The list goes on. You, then you do this to Chris. People just look at it like, gosh, damn, the Clippers don't give a shit who you are. Like that shit, they do cold. They serve their dinners cold over there. It don't look good. And then you got the opposite of the appeal. With people go to LA, they want to go play for the Lakers.
Yeah, you're already battling the most famous franchise
Yeah,
in the same
people
town. You're
already
already
don't
battling.
want to go to your team. Exactly.
Yeah,
They already don't want to go to your team. When people talk about playing in LA, they talk about playing for the purple and gold. Okay, let's keep it 100. So the Clippers were finding their mojo when they had Lob City and Chris and the teams that we had. We were the cool team for once. And then we covered up the banners. Steve Ballmer announces the new arena. Like, bro, we were getting our own thing. And it just has not progressed. No offense. And I'm not saying this is a Ty Lue thing, because I'm not tying this to Ty Lue. But since Ty Lue has got there, since my father has left and Ty Lue has got, the Clippers have either stayed put or gone down. All right. We were building, 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 and then now it's just going towards a plateau. Now, people would probably argue and say that the PG thing is what sealed the fate. Shea and all these guys that they gave away is that obviously helps, but
you
from a
had to do it.
franchise,
We already visited that trade. You had to do it. You were getting
correct,
Kawhi.
and that's why you can't
Yeah,
give a hard time. Can't give them a hard time for making that move because at that time, Kawhi Leonard was arguably the best player in the league, and Paul George was another face of the league, and he wanted to play with Paul George, and there's a possibility there. There's not a person on the planet that wouldn't have made that move at that time, especially not knowing what Shea was going to become. So that's garbage. Now, it's turned out to be one of the worst trades in NBA history and set up this foundation for what the Thunder have going on right now. But no one saw that unless you had a crystal ball. But from a franchise point, the way they treat their players, that shit matters, man. And them
yeah.
cutting Chris, it was a massive L. I think it was a massive L, and I'm going to leave it at that.
You made a good point about the Clippers. You guys with the Lob City and everything, that really made the Clippers cool. My entire lifetime, they were kind of looked at as like a cursed franchise. Now, they had their Darius Miles and Quentin Richardson moments with the head tap, but they weren't winning games back then. You know what I mean? With Lamar Odom. And then they had a really good
Let
year
me
with
ask you
Sam
something.
Cassell and Elton Brand. What's up?
Let me ask you something. Do you think the Blazers wanted to sign Damian Lillard to like a 2 years, $40 million? You think that did anything for their team?
But it's,
He's
like
coming off.
our producer just said, like Kobe Bryant after the Achilles, the Lakers took care of him. They still made contracts. They treated their stars right. So like that's what you're
Yes, yes,
alluding to.
yeah, exactly. The Lakers signed Kobe after an Achilles tear at the end of his career. He wasn't going to bring them any wins. He wasn't going to do anything for that team. No different than the Blazers signing Damian Lillard on the back end of his career after an Achilles injury. They signed him a 2 years, 40, whatever. They actually paid him good money too for relatively not what he's used to, but still very good money in hindsight. Why? Because of what he's done for the franchise, and it makes the organization look good. They know they're not winning it all anyway. They're not winning it all anyway. It's an opportunity to do right by a guy who's brought in hundreds of millions to your franchise, who's taken them to your playoffs and had some of the best playoff moments we have in our history in Portland end and begin with this guy. Or they don't begin, they had Drexler and all those guys, but as of recently, it's been this guy in
Right.
modern day. And that's why you do that deal, because it shows you're a Class A organization. The Lakers, what they do with Kobe, you sign them to that damn contract. It didn't do anything for them, but it's what they did right by a guy who's brought them everything. So for a guy like Chris Paul, who was a part of the most winningest time in franchise history, the greatest point guard the franchise has ever seen, and arguably the greatest player the franchise has ever seen, you can't do right by Chris. Now, his stints there weren't as long as Kobe and the Lakers and Dame in Portland. I get that. All right. He wasn't drafted there. He wasn't the baby. I get that. But he went from New Orleans to LA and was there for a significant amount of time. And you could argue the peak of his prime was there. And that's where I'm just like, for a franchise who doesn't have a lot to celebrate, you cutting the guy that's the most celebrated within the franchise because him and the coach aren't talking or he's saying stuff with it. Come on, guys. Just hold it down for a year just because he deserves it. And then you couldn't have brought him back last year. No one would have known there was any drama anyways because it was a farewell tour and you could have moved on. Your team's 5-16 anyways. Who gives a shit? So that's where I'm 50-50 because I know who Chris is, but I also see the side. But after you start putting it, it ends up being like 70-30. I'm on Chris's side.